Great. Thank you for having me back at UVA. My name is John Konya. I graduated back in 2014, and I'll share with you some events that shaped my life. And so starting out, I was not a very good student. In second grade, I was actually diagnosed with two learning disabilities, and the main one was an auditory processing deficit. And what that means is I would be given instructions in class, and I just wasn't able to process and quite put into action what I was supposed to do on that assignment and task. And so that made school really difficult for me. And from third grade to 12th grade, I was actually in special ed classes. And starting at 8 in third grade, it was really difficult because you were often separated from the rest of the students throughout most of the day. And so you could be, tagged as a lazy student or somebody that was dumb. And explaining that to other 8-year-olds wasn't easy. And going through school, I just didn't enjoy being there, except for recess. I like the social aspects, but so when it came time for me to graduate from high school, I had no intention whatsoever of going to college. I didn't think I was capable. And so growing up, I'd always loved working with computers. And so I actually been on the internet since 1990 and decided that I would go and look to get some certifications and find a job instead of going to school. In 2001, I was absolutely blessed to get an internship on Capitol Hill at the Committee on International Relations. Changed the name, but I still use that name. And in August of 2001, I started there just doing IT. Now, obviously, this is a month before the 9/11 attacks. And so I was actually there, arrived a little late that morning, and I could see the attacks that had already taken place in New York. And so I go about my job that day. And then pretty soon after, you see that the Pentagon has been attacked. And so we get evacuated from the buildings. I was in the Rayburn right next to the Capitol. And as I'm walking through DC, I can see the smoke rising from the Pentagon. As I made my way home, I really thought about probably enlisting that day, but I still had the internship. And so I felt that let me finish this out and then I'll make a decision about what I want to do. At the end of the internship, though, they offered me a full-time job. So I took that. I was excited. I enjoyed it. It was a very interesting time. I'd always been interested in politics, but especially around that time, you got to see a lot of really important people up on Capitol Hill. And again, I loved working in IT. So I stayed for the next 3 years doing that. And while I enjoyed it, I still had that sense that I needed to join the military, that I needed to serve in uniform, that sense of duty. And so in August of 2004, I joined the United States Marine Corps. Not everybody in my family was happy about that. My father flew in the Navy, so he didn't like me joining trains. And my grandfather served in World War II. And I remember him calling me one night, telling me how proud he was, and then calling me the next morning and say, "Hey, don't do this. It's not a so." But I joined, and I was stationed in 29 Palms, California, where for the next year we would train. And then in July of 2005, we deployed to the center of Iraq to a city called Fallujah. And so I had been gone through training as a machine gunner. And so I spent 6 months there doing convoy operations and other missions in the city and then the surrounding areas. And so I was on top of the Humvee. And when we were going through the city, one of the main attacks that they were using against us was roadside bombs or improvised explosive devices. So what that is they set up an explosive on the side of the road, and then as you pass, they detonate it. And we'd been dealing with those the entire time I was there. But then on December 31st, New Year's Eve, 2005, we were returning from a mission when a roadside bomb was detonated right next to my Humvee that I was on. So I was initially knocked out. But what happened when the bomb exploded, shrapnel went into the back of my head, and then a large chunk entered my helmet and smashed it in. Now, the helmet kept the shrapnel out of my head, but the hit was so hard that I had a massive wound on the top of my head. And so when I woke up, I was just in excruciating pain. And with the traumatic brain injury, it was hard for me to understand exactly what was going on. My driver was able to pull me out of the Humvee, and from what I have talked to him about, basically all I was saying, when he would try to chat with me is, my head hurts, my head hurts. I mean, I was accurate, but it was extremely scary. I mean, I'm laying there, you can't understand fully what's going on. And I'm putting my hand up to my head, and just more and more blood is just coming out. And as I'm laying there, again, I couldn't really put thoughts together. I remember just saying, Jesus, help. And then from there, uh, laying there, I felt I was dying. I thought that was pretty much it. As bad as things looked at that moment, things started kind of going in the right direction. Our Navy corpsman, our medic that was with us on the convoy, was able to get to me and slow the bleeding. And then we were able to rush to the American medical facility in the area, Camp Fallujah, where they put me out, and I was flown to another place called Bachelor, where I would be given a craniotomy. So they took off half the side of my skull, drained out the blood, and then put it back and fixed it down with titanium. So now I have a 10.5-inch scar on my head in the shape of a J. So it's J for John. And from there, I was flown to a place called Landstuhl, Germany. I went out on New Year's Eve in one continent, woke up New Year's Day in a completely unexpected continent. So clearly I had a adventure over the evening. But I woke up there in the ICU. I wasn't able to move very well, and it's still, with the traumatic brain injury, very difficult to process what everybody was telling me and what was going on. After about 3 or 4 days, they were able to stabilize me enough to allow me to be flown home. And growing up in the Northern Virginia area was great because they took me to Bethesda, now called Walter Reed, but my family was able to meet me there that night. And just so you know what kind of family I have, as much of a shock as it was that, I was almost killed, my oldest brother, Rich, took a picture of my other brother, Greg, pretending to lick my head. So this is the type of thing back to I love my family. So being in the hospital in the condition I was, it was still trying to figure out everything that had happened, but I started feeling, very guilty, ashamed that I had been wounded, sad that I had left all my friends. I felt that I had abandoned them, and just didn't really want to do anything. There was a couple days where I was just very, very down. And one day I was in my hospital bed when a Navy corpsman from another unit, he wheeled himself into my room, and I could see that he had lost both his legs. And he comes up, introduces himself to me, and he says, "Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you need anything? Are they taking care of you?" And that was like a light switch. It was an immediate change. I no longer thought I could feel sorry for myself. If this person is asking me if I need help from them, from there on, I started my recovery process. I think that was really the thing that did it. I'd be up at the hospital for the next year or so, mostly as an outpatient, but I do 2 surgeries, 1 plastic to make me handsome, and multiple rounds of physical therapy, because it was not only learning to walk, but then learning to walk without a cane. And then at one point they had me walking backwards on a treadmill and they'd throw things at me. So some of it was fun. But then also cognitive therapy, a lot of sessions of that, as well as lots of group therapy sessions with the other Marines. And I think that was really important. During this time, I'm starting to realize, okay, my time in the Marine Corps is coming to an end. I need to start figuring out what I'm going to do next. I still had those learning disabilities with me. On top of that, now I have traumatic brain injury. Do I really want to go to college? I didn't think so, but my family, especially my mother, talked me into going, and I had the GI Bill. So about 2 weeks before I left the Marine Corps, I started at Northern Virginia Community College. Everybody knows it as Nova. And the first semester, I took about 12 to 18 credits, I think, and I got straight A's. So I was very encouraged by that. I think a lot of the resilience and discipline that I got from the Marine Corps helped me start doing well. And so I continued on. I was given another opportunity to work on Capitol Hill at a different committee with somebody I really respected. So I jumped at that opportunity, even though it really slowed down my progress with the school. Now I was only going to school at night, so it probably added another 4 or 5 years. But eventually, when I finished up at Nova, trying to figure out where I was going to go to finish up my bachelor's, I just happened to see an email about the UVA BIS degree program. And I am so thankful I saw that email. I responded immediately. I was past the deadline, but they worked with me. And within, I think, the end of the month or so, I was enrolled and ready to go. And the next semester I started at UVA. And I cannot tell you how incredible my experience was here. I loved the classes, some more than others. I love the people that I went with, especially my friends, Tim, Lori, Tucker, Jorge. And it was just such an incredible experience. I came down to grounds to Charlottesville as often as I could, even though I was mostly in Northern Virginia. And one of the best things that I did was I was able to talk my friend Tim into going on a study abroad to Germany. And we were actually there over New Year's. And I can tell you this trip, I had a lot better time over New Year's than I did my first one in the SEU. And so from there, doing my capstone and finishing up at UVA, I was so proud of what I had accomplished. And I had that confidence. And I took that, and a few years after finishing at UVA, I went over to George Mason and got my MBA. And then because I've worked in IT for so long, I got my Master's of Information Technology from Harvard. So completely done with school now. I will not be going back unless anybody has an in for law school. But anyway, thank you. Those are some events that really shaped my life. And I mean, you heard the challenges I faced, the learning disabilities, the setbacks, the injuries, the long recoveries. But I took it one day at a time, one day at a time. And, I think I found something meaningful in life. And so thank you again for listening to my story. Yes.